Greetings and welcome to Calm Clear Conversations. I'm Christopher Johnson of Calm Clear Communications, and today with me is none other than Dr. Sue Griffey. Dr. Sue, all right, the doctor is public health. There are no mistakes, but there was a faux pas on my part. I had PhD, but that's not the correct degree. The correct degree is Doctor of Public Health.
It is, exactly. Or in the old days, we called it a DERF or a FUD.
Okay. So what is a doctor of public health? What does that mean for me, who someone less familiar with that over a different degree?
Well, the good news is in the last 3 years, most of everyone in the world, including my family, finally understands a little of what I've been doing for my whole career in global health, global public health. A doctor of public health is prepared beyond the master's degree to focus on key areas of public health. The one we saw in COVID most prominently, well, there were two: epidemiology and communications and behavior change. But there are other parts of it. The last part of my career for almost 3 decades was in program evaluation. How do we know these programs, such as vaccine or research programs, are effective? But thank you for asking, and thank you for correcting it.
Absolutely. So public health is, well, that will always play a role in all of our conversations. I would guess because of what's going on in the world right now. But the focus of today's conversation is technology and communication and looking at it from a global standpoint to make connections. So we know each other, although we have not met in person yet.
Right.
We met through the marvelous Brenda Meller.
I'm a big fangirl.
Okay, I was going to say me too, but I'm not quite a fangirl. I'm a huge fan.
Yes.
So Brenda is wonderful, and she does a VIP session for job seekers, and we were both participating in that, offering aid and support to those on that session.
Right.
And I was intrigued by the information you were sharing.
Thank you. Just for those who don't know about the VIP job seekers group, Brenda started that a couple years ago with COVID. She, like others, brought a lot of things online that I benefited from, coming from a very global worldview where my mentees, I've been mentoring for over a decade, after my career in public health, when I early retired, I have to say that. But Brenda has a weekly session, and she invites anybody who's a job seeker to attend. And I made a deliberate effort, once I got to know of her through Ken Lang, actually, to be able to go to those weekly meetings. She let me come when I explained to her I'd really like to understand how the U.S. market forces shape what people need to do in what I specialize in, which is helping all levels of professionals at various career transitions build and use their professional presence to rise up above the noise virtually, to be heard in person, or in various other ways that we show up in person, online, on the phone, whatever that is. So yes, those are weekly sessions, Christopher, and I always valued your Zoom tips, because there were things I was like, what? You can put a logo on your Zoom? And I haven't done it yet, but I will.
Okay. And all right, so I have to back up for a second. You're bringing a global perspective to the U.S. market, or you're seeking to understand more the U.S. market from a global perspective.
Yes, because in actual fact, almost no one, and in fact, a couple people from Rebecca's group have contacted me, and I had a call with one of them a week or so ago, and she said, I'm a global program manager, But the world of the globe, for me, has been one that's evolved. I mean, I will go over a little old history. I joined LinkedIn very early on in 2004, and it was a place to be connected because it was one of the few electronic places that didn't require me sending out a newsletter or an aerogram from, I lived and worked in many countries overseas and continued that from the US after 1995. All my mentees almost initially were global through various programs, friends of friends who reached out to me or colleagues, whatever. I think what I wanted to learn about the US market is why people went straight to revise your resume, update your resume, revise your resume. And it looked like there was a whole chunk missing. Well, there was, I knew that, because what I define as your professional presence isn't just sorry, I talk with my hands, a resume document. It is how and in what way do you excavate your evidence of your past? I work with so many people, even now young graduate students, who've already forgotten some of the important events that they've done that help demonstrate where they put skills into practice, because a skill is only a skill. It doesn't show up as valued unless you have experience in it. So excavating evidence goes beyond the resume. It goes back to where's your storyline? What's the thread? I've been amazed at the younger graduate students I work with who come through with, in their teen years, community service that's in public. I work with a lot of public health and a fair number of other people now who've found me, but people who want to be able to describe their commitment to public health, even if they hadn't worked in it until they got a research assistant job in graduate school. So the global audience is wide, and I wish that there were more recognition among US folks, job seekers, who will start to understand that their companies are most likely working with global teams in some fashion. I don't know the numbers, but I'd say easily 2/3 of US companies have some global reach. Just a guesstimate, because think about it, everything's so intertwined. We outsource finances, we outsource HR. We never know where those people are sitting. So I wanted to learn much more about what the US resume writers, LinkedIn experts, all of those folks were saying, and I've connected with a lot of them through you and Brenda and others. But I also wanted to help, to continue to help the mentees, the people. I now have a course on professional presence, help them understand how do they tell their story in a way that a global audience is going to understand what value they bring. That's excavating evidence, but in broad detail.
I love that term, excavating evidence. Now, there is a difference, I imagine, in how LinkedIn gets used, how technology gets used to make a connection. And you are a digital pioneer. I mean, you said you've been on LinkedIn since 2004.
And I had my first computer in 1993. Sorry, 1983. What am I talking about? Yeah, the end of my first graduate school. Yes, 1983, a CPM luggable 17-pound K-Pro. That was considered portable in those days. Yep.
I remember those.
Oh, yay.
Well, yeah, and see, the kind I had a flip down keyboard with a 5-inch monitor with 2 floppy drives.
Oh, you had the newer version than what I started with. Yes, exactly.
So yeah,
I love our shared history in digital world.
Is the digital world it shrinks, and as technology gets better and better, and you've kept up because, again, you're a digital pioneer. But the global use. So how does LinkedIn look different in the US versus non-US?
Well, I don't see it in other sites. I don't know what it would look like if I were in the UK as a UK user. What I know is even in the last 2 years, the numbers of mentees who found me through various connections, sometimes just finding me on LinkedIn. I know one person recently connected with me because he found Bangladesh in my, I must have searched for Bangladesh in my work history because he mentioned it. So they're aware of using LinkedIn, but there are things that they don't take advantage of that if I have to say, so there are 3 things that I think everybody should focus on. And this is no surprise to a very US audience, especially those who follow Brenda, you, others. But you've got to focus on the first box in LinkedIn. A lot of people don't have name pronunciation. And I loved it. A year ago or more, Brenda recommended, let's all do name pronunciation and normalize it and not just be American centric on LinkedIn, assuming everybody knows how to pronounce Sue Griffey. Because when I was young, going to college, people couldn't spell or pronounce my name. Fast forward years later, there are baseball players named Ken Griffey, but in those days it was Jerfy, Giraffe. I mean, yeah, exactly. So I'd love for name record to be a standard, and I encourage people in my course and that I work with to use it, to also do what Brenda said. In 10 seconds, you can fit a lot of information. Record your name, pronounce it, and then something memorable about you. So that's
Okay.
one of my focus in the first box tips for today. I have 2 others we'll talk about.
All right. So yeah, do we take that for granted in the US market? I mean, I've added a 10-second name pronouncer. Now, Christopher Johnson, fairly easy to pronounce in the US.
Right. And I think the global recognition would be, just because Brenda Meller, Sue Griffey, Christopher Johnson look easy to us, makes it very biased in favor of saying, I don't need to do that.
Oh.
And I encourage people with names that are not traditional in the US to use, whether in the US or elsewhere, they can use it and give people a flavor of themselves. How do you sound in English? Maybe you have an accent, maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. What it matters is that you've put yourself out there and expanded from the LinkedIn box to now there's an audio component, eventually a video component if they do, those aren't the basic engagement tips to do a profile video, but there are ways to get known and to be seen, and that brings more trust and credibility initially because people see you using the platform in different ways.
Okay. And I echo that tip on the name pronunciation. 10 seconds is a long time, and most folk don't need a full 10 seconds for their name. So you add on to that and provide some information about yourself. You make it personal. You let your personality come through in those 10 seconds.
Yeah. And as Brenda always says, and smile when you say it. So that'll come through on the audio.
Absolutely. And yeah, hey, we do have a message from the Brenda Meller.
Oh, Brenda, we've been giving you shout outs, of course.
And some other folk are chiming in from our VIP sessions on Friday.
Oh, hi, John. I recognize John. Yes. I'm glad he's enjoying sunny and hot Las Vegas. It is hot out there all summer long.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right. The first tip, name pronunciation and keeping the top box on LinkedIn engaging.
Right.
So
second tip. The second tip is focus on your headline. Now, there's a lot of prescriptive information out there about how to use the headline. And it's great, generally. But a lot of the people I work with aren't even used to giving themselves a title. So I'll back up a minute from the headline and say, when I discuss professional presence, what I mean by that, as I said, is how you show up in the virtual world in real face-to-face interactions in some fashion. But to build professional presence and get it, most people aren't taught this. We don't have it in grad school. What we have is career services. They do a great job. They help you with your resume. They help you with your cover letter. But we also don't recognize that many of us that are participating on LinkedIn are knowledge workers. Knowledge workers don't necessarily produce products. We're not making cars. We're not doing a landscaping job. I can't point to anything, but you actually can. And when you understand as a knowledge worker what you produce in your job, are you a trainer? You produce people that are trained. Are you a program implementer who helps a behavioral program, change? You want to lose weight? We'll do a walk-in group. That's one of the easy ones to give as an example. No matter what your role in what I call the value chain of knowledge work, you produce something. And the things you produce are it's sort of two things. It's either in writing or verbally. So you've written a report. You've provided a briefing to Ministry of Health officials in the various settings I've worked in overseas. You do a results presentation at a conference about research you've done or a program that was successful. You write blogs. You post on LinkedIn. That's another way we demonstrate our expertise. And more in the last 2 years, I have seen so many of the LinkedIn experts resonate with something I observed several years ago, which is there is so much value in LinkedIn commenting. For me, that's where the state of the art is being built. When someone says, here's how I do it, what do you do? Those comments are a goldmine. So there's various ways to demonstrate products of our professional presence and then to start using them. So going back to the headline, one of I have 4 products and 4 steps to building professional presence. And the first is a summary. I call it a biopara because when I called it a summary, they became this long because people wanted to put in everything they'd ever done. But it's the big picture focus. And the first thing you do is choose a title for yourself. Most mentees I work with globally have never had that opportunity, and they've been told your title is only what your work is. And if they're not working right now, they feel like they aren't allowed to have a title. So the headline becomes important real estate for them to, just like with the audio name record, show a little of their personality. And I've noticed that more and more of them are taking the opportunity. I focus on this in the last step on LinkedIn. The 4 steps in the course are a biopara, your full CV, which in the US is going to be something people don't know, but that is writing down everything you've ever done. Whether or not that whole document ever comes to light, you will have it and use it. Your resume, I call it a resume template for whatever you're aiming at now. And then getting it out on LinkedIn so that you have the virtual visibility. So the headline is something that I've been pleased in the course I've now run. We're in the 3rd cohort. They are doing a great job choosing their headlines. They're using experts like Brenda and others who I give them and say, listen to these people. They're going to have a lot of good information for you. So I'm seeing that people are using technology. What I know is that they all say they're drowning in information. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to sift through it. So I think the course has helped me in a one-to-many approach, get people focused on around a few key products and changes and how they can take control of their own professional presence. So that's the long way around tip number 2, which is use the real estate in your headline.
Okay. So, all right. So the first one was the name pronunciation.
Right.
Name pronunciation.
Right.
And hey, Orly loves that feature.
Good. Is it ZY or ZY? I'm just curious. I'm just taking a stab at it since I can't get on and listen to you, Orly, but I'll check your profile out after we're done.
And Orly has a great profile, and she is one of the LinkedIn resources and experts out there.
Perfect.
And then the second one was your your headline.
Headline. Yeah.
Yeah, and making sure so the headline should show evidence excavated.
I love that. It should. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if I can get people to choose a title, public health advisor, infectious disease specialist, program evaluator, that's a step forward. If they can add on um, conduct qualitative research studies, then we know what their evidence is. There may not be the specific evidence, but what you get is the realm of what they're doing in their job focus.
And that should marry up nicely with the field and the language that is used in that field, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. And I know, and people in the course always tell me, you have too many public health examples, but that's where I have mentees who've been incredibly generous over the last 5 years and have given me approval to show before and after changes to those 4 steps, to show their actual names, to their full CV. What does a full CV look like? How should I describe it if I'm in grad school, or if I'm in a third country? I'm not in my home country and I'm not somewhere else. I'm in a third country. How do I validate things? So yes, so your headline, excavating your evidence. I wander between Andy Foote's use 80 characters to everybody else who says, Phil, I think it's 220 characters. But if they get something there, I'm ecstatic if it's not just pulled up by LinkedIn as their most recent job.
So then a question with that, I mean, with your global background, should people showcase their language? Meaning, if you're in a area where there are 3 languages commonly spoken and you are fluent in all of them, should all 3 be in your headline? Or how would that work?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on what you're aiming for in the job. But it's interesting you bring up language, because that's one part on the CV I emphasize to people. Usually there's the all other skills section, or at least in the full CV, it's the skills that don't fit in naturally or you want to call out. And a lot of times it's software packages, online stuff that people know how to use, and it's languages. But in actual fact, I speak a smattering of several different languages. I was okay in French, but I was never professionally proficient. I couldn't use it in a professional conversation other than a few greetings, and I could follow a meeting. I can't read. I can read it. I cannot write it. So I help people understand that everything that we have has to be described in terms of skills of a rating. If people say, I know Microsoft Office, I say, well, do you know Microsoft Access? That's actually one of the products of Microsoft Office. And they say, I don't know what that is. And I said, but you've told everybody you know it. And are you basic, intermediate, or advanced? And there's no value judgment. You're just trying to guide people. With language, you have to be really clear that you can read, write, and use it verbally in business if you want to get hired for that. But for example, if someone is living in a country that's an English language, has as one of its official languages English, India, Philippines, a variety of others have English and other languages, you might want to say bilingual in French and whatever, because that says, oh, and by the way, I'm working in India, but I could also work in West Africa or Haiti or wherever French would be an advantage. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. Those are small but very important things that we can bring as our evidence to help people understand. Because ultimately, Christopher, everything is like this conversation between you and me. The other person on the other side of our document, what we're saying, they have to understand it, and we have to tell them in a way that they can, which is usually the person on the other side, what problem can you solve for me now? Why am I hiring you? Why am I promoting you? Why should I hire your company to do work?
And language sometimes gets left out of that soft skills section. It's one of those, well, everyone around here does this.
Right.
Well, we don't know everyone around there. We are
Yeah.
looking at you.
Right. Yes, that's exactly it. Give people the information they need.
And the third tip, what is that?
The third tip is one that I have trouble getting across to people even more than name record. And I was thrilled. I think Brenda posted on this last year at least once, and I know in the last couple months. And Richard Vanderblom brought it up. I meant to look it up a week or two ago. And that is, make sure that your picture is visible to everybody, because sometimes they connect with me and I still can't see their picture because many people don't know that their LinkedIn settings have defaults that are not favorable to them. So I find people from all corners of the world who will put up their own pictures. I'm really pleased with the younger mentees and course participants I have who do put up great photos, but not everybody can see them, and they don't understand that, once you connect with the first level doesn't mean the first level person like me can see everything. So when I talk about focus on the first box, it's actually even the left-hand side of it. Your picture, your headline, and the little speaker to show name pronunciation.
So yeah, just sticking with that, if that first box, that upper area of your profile is engaging, then people will scroll on.
I
Or
think
they will,
that's
yeah, they'll find out more. If it's not engaging, they will just go by it.
And even I will have that reaction when people whose names I think I know how to pronounce. I've lived in a lot of countries and have been fortunate, and I'm interested in names and how they sound. But sometimes when I'm going to meet with them, I want to check, is it Isla or Ayla? I don't know. And in different countries, the names that are similarly spelled have different pronunciations, and I want to get it right.
Is there a difference in usage? I mean, is it more widely used in the US?
Generally, you're more people that I'm connected to or that I see in my feed as second level connections will have photos there. But
Okay.
what's unclear to me is I don't look for them before I'm connected to them. What I don't know is whether they have visibility generally. There are some people who've told me they're not comfortable with it, and that's fine too. I just want people to be aware that some things are happening to their LinkedIn profile without them knowing. And they think they're visible to recruiters or to big gurus because they are posting interesting comments, but it probably comes up with the gray blob when they're making a comment. And I don't think they're aware of that.
And as Brenda has said, gray is not okay.
I love that. That's great.
So, all right. Oh, and hashtags. So, one of the things we were talking about earlier before we uh, forward faced our conversation is hashtags. And you said you have a couple that you have been using for a while.
Yeah, 6 or 7 years. So the one that I use all the time and is still very relevant now is give value to get value. And I the the related one is see and be seen, because people there's lots of people who analyzed LinkedIn in the old days. And yes, it was perceived as a place to put your resume, your CV, whatever, you're in, a static website. As we began to have LinkedIn groups, and 15 years ago, 14 years ago, LinkedIn groups, I watched the knowledge management professionals in global development build the state of the art in indicators using a LinkedIn group, because we didn't have other meeting platforms other than SharePoint, maybe. So it was really an important thing to be able to start to use LinkedIn. People were afraid they didn't know how to engage. And they thought that it was all about them having to do something, to go out and find people. And that's where, for me, LinkedIn groups was an advantage 10 years ago, because people could join them and get proximity, get content that they wanted to know about water and sanitation, or global design in development settings, whatever it was. And in that way, the opportunities became wider under give value to get value. But it's still very true. You do not want to go out and ask someone to help you out if you haven't tried to reach out to them on LinkedIn, looked at their profile, or in the old days when people would ask me for informational interviews, and I would want to say back to them, didn't you read the website where I work? Didn't you read about evaluation? That's a little harsh, but it always came across as uninformed. So I think more people are informed now, but they still don't feel comfortable engaging. It feels too public for them. And I hold their hands and guide them through how they can engage in bite-sized pieces.
And that brings up another point that Lori O'Grady was uh, talking about with privacy.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to be aware of what, or the privacy settings, and what is being shared, and if that is what our intent is.
I think sometimes it's hard because the people that I work with globally, they're not living on LinkedIn. If I can get them on LinkedIn 5 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week, I consider that a big success.
Okay. And 5 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week. It doesn't take long to be engaging, but it does take intention.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I mean, I have mentees that get back in touch that say, oh, yeah, I was using LinkedIn, but I stopped. And I sort of know, because I realize after a while they're not there. My goal is to help people on LinkedIn by amplifying whatever they put up, trying to help them get positive reinforcement for the efforts they're making in engaging in visibility. And I think more people are more comfortable with it now, 2 years into the virtual world and virtual networking, virtual connections, virtual giving value and getting value.
Okay. All right. So I did notice something on your profile, and I have to ask. The mentor with pom poms?
Oh, well, let's just say I wasn't in the in crowd when I was in high school, and there was no way I was going to be a cheerleader. But I've always been a cheerleader for people in my adult career, and in fact have mentored throughout my entire career. So when I had a decade birthday at work, someone gave me some pom poms because they said, "You're always the one giving," and those were great. So a few years ago, when John Espirian was recommending people have hashtags about themselves, I thought, well, I'm optimistically practical. I mean, I'm definitely the person who sees the way forward for people. And I think that's what works in the mentoring that I do. I help people with showing them that they can get to their goal because I can see the pathway forward. So yes, so I self-proclaimed that I'm the mentor with pom-poms, and it's partly because I want to celebrate not small wins every time I talk to someone, they've had a win just by engaging in mentoring, just by getting on LinkedIn and being more visible or more connected. And I want to celebrate that because everybody thinks I've got to get a job, and they forget all the steps they're doing to build up to it. So yes, so I self-proclaimed, maybe I have to put that in all honesty in my headline now.
Oh, it's there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all right. And from my standpoint, that's one of those things where it's a bit of personality. B, it's engaging. And
Thank you.
the authenticity comes through. So I feel, although that we haven't met in person, it's like, oh, that's my buddy Sue.
Yeah, that's how I feel about you. Yep.
So it's things that help deepen a connection Always wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, are you open to connecting with people on LinkedIn?
I love connections. I love the serendipity of connections because I'm always finding people are connected to other amazing people that I need to know, or I didn't know you knew one of my best friends from grad school. Yes, I love connections. I would love it if people would say they saw the LinkedIn Live. I always ask for a message, but that would be in my second set of tips that we'll maybe do another time on live. If you invite me back, we'll talk about getting people to write messages, because if Brenda can't get it with her 60, 70,000 followers, and she's still luckily trumpeting the news for us. But I'm always optimistic. I'm hopeful someday people will remember to write a note.
They will. And all
Yes,
right. So
I would love to connect.
and that is wonderful. So you mentioned serendipity, and see, I'm one of those that is always seeking serendipity, and we find what we seek.
Hmm.
So if you seek, and for me, serendipity is akin to magic. It's like, wait a second. So one of my best friends, wait a second, how do you know so and so?
Yeah.
Oh, and we figured out we had a ton of overlapping circles. It's like, you know, all my radio friends, you know, all my Second City friends, my run. Okay, we're supposed to be friends.
I totally agree. I love it.
Yeah, you seek magic, and magic is what you find.
Yeah. No, it's very true. It's very true.
So, Sue, this has been a wonderful conversation. Of course, I'm, um, could you be bribed to have another conversation at a later date?
I think we still have a lot to talk about. I'd love to.
Thank you. And yes, we do have a lot to talk about. And, those 3 tips, hey, focus on that top part of your LinkedIn profile. Make sure you have a pronunciation for your name. Include your personality. Focus on your headline. Your headline should show some evidence of excavation or excavation of evidence.
Great.
See, I was paying attention.
You were.
And a profile photo, one that showcases who you are. So a professional photo is best. Work with what you have. It should fill up the frame. It should be you, so that when people do meet you in real life, they're not going, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So this has been a delight. Thank you very much.
And thank you for having me and for asking me to do this. It's been so much fun. And thanks for those who attended. Loved your comments. And it's been great. Thanks a lot, Christopher.
Interested in learning more about any of the items that you've seen in today's session? Leave a comment below. Interested in being a guest? Leave a comment below. I help event planners and organizers produce virtual events. Learn how I can support your virtual event by connecting or leaving a comment. Thanks for watching.